Hi, you're listening to Mindful Mutterings Goes Travelling, the mindfulness-based travel podcast for all of us adventurers who love to go travelling, love to live in the present moment and want to make life a more enriching experience. Thanks for listening. Hi, thanks for joining me on Mindful Mutterings Goes Travelling, and this time I'm in Bulgaria, although we were very lucky to make it to Bulgaria at all. We landed in Greece the day before after a very early flight. Won't be booking that again. And after having to do some stuff in town, we were just chilling on the balcony at our apartment before heading into Athens to get our coach to Sofia. And I had it in my head, should have checked, I had it in my head that our coach was at 8:30. So we decided to leave about 3:30, go and get some dinner in Athens, very relaxed, lovely. Very lucky we did leave when we did, because it turned out that our coach was actually leaving at 6:30. So we had a very hurried dinner and a long walk later. We finally arrived where we thought we should be. We checked that we were waiting for the right bus and congratulated ourselves on making it there in time. Ha! You know when that spider sense kicks in and something just doesn't feel right? Well, I'm very keen on acting on that, as I believe it's all part of being mindful and open to suggestion. And I believe I'm having the sensation because either something needs checking in the outside world or with my thoughts and emotions. So we went to the office and sure enough, we were queuing for the wrong bus to Sofia, and we had to be on the other side of the roundabout and it should be leaving at any second. I sent my husband running on ahead as I was struggling with a trapped nerve in my back at the time and running was not an option. I arrived at the bus to find him having a discussion with a miserable looking man about why we couldn't get on the bus. This was quickly sorted out when I showed the driver our tickets. He wasn't happy, but despite our heartfelt thanks, he was very grumpy, opened the door and let us board. Phew, that was a close call, as we had lots of stuff booked for getting to Sofia, or when we were in Sofia. So we settled down, and I've not done one of these before, and I was kind of expecting to have 5 or 6 hours on the road before maybe stopping at a services somewhere, and then doing the other 6 hours of the journey, and probably getting some sleep. So I was fully prepared. I chilled some wine, bought some crisps with us, got a movie downloaded, thinking we'd have a lovely evening and then get some sleep. How wrong we were. So apart from the fact that 12 hours on a coach is incredibly uncomfortable with a trapped nerve, it was just so noisy. It seemed like everyone had their phone at its loudest setting and people were taking and making calls all night long. We also stopped everywhere, every 3 hours, whether you wanted to or not. The lights went back up, everyone was encouraged to get off the bus and use the facilities. And then obviously we had to stop at the border and present our passports, which then added another stop to the journey. But what was very cool, crossing between two countries in the middle of the night is very exciting. Anyway, needless to say, our first stop on arrival in Sofia at 7 a.m. the next morning was a coffee shop. And we had an hour to find some breakfast before being picked up for the tour I'd booked us on to Plovdiv, the Athens fortress and the Trove monastery. And there are bakeries absolutely everywhere in Sofia selling the most enormous pies and cakes and pastries. So that was easy. My husband picked something up from there and then we headed to the nearest shop to pick up some cheese for me to put in one of the gluten-free rolls that I had with me. Being a celiac, I mean, it's just, I don't want to minimise it for people that really struggle with it, but I think it's as difficult as you allow it to be. So it means that before we visit any country, I have already checked out the food options. I've usually booked a couple of restaurants that serve traditional food made gluten-free so that I know that I can have a couple of decent meals, but eating on the fly is always an issue for me, so I never travel without gluten-free rolls in my bag. Anyway, got my cheese, got my rolls, food sorted, we headed to our pickup point. The driver arrived, flung open the door. He didn't get out to open it, he literally pushed it open. And he didn't look very well. In fact, he looked like he had an almighty hangover. So we got in, he went to pick up the other 5 people booked onto the tour, and off we went. And it soon became very apparent that he was actually very unwell. I think it was about 20 minutes into our journey, he pulled over at the side of the road and threw up. Went on to explain that this is a recurring illness and the only solution really, although he does take medication sometimes, is a drip at the hospital. So obviously we were all immediately very concerned. I mean, we were concerned anyway, but we, all sympathised, empathised with him and honestly expected the tour to end. Unfortunately, he decided that he was going to do the tour even if it killed him or us. So we stopped probably, I don't know, another 10 or so times for him to throw up, with one of us offering to drive back to Sofia every time we stopped. And we're all now very worried for our safety, as he was clearly in no fit state to drive. But he kept refusing, saying that he was determined to do the tour. And by this time, we're openly discussing how to end the tour each time he got out of the car, as he just would not listen to reason or be responsible. So after a very worrying couple of hours, we finally arrived in one piece in Plovdiv, and we all retrieved our bags, said we were really sorry that he was ill, but we weren't getting back on the bus with him. So could he please call the company and let them know that he was ill, and that they needed to come up with a solution. So I'd already been Googling while we were driving there and found a bus that we could get back to Sofia on. And as we were all pretty much in walking distance of each other's hotels, we were all happy to use that if we had to. Anyway, the company said that they were going to send another driver, so we suggested we wander off by ourselves and then meet him and the new driver back at the bus in a couple of hours. But he insisted on taking us on the tour, throwing up at each monument. Just want to set the scene for you here. It's probably 36 degrees, it's very hot, and we're all on holiday, and we've all just had the journey from hell. And now this clearly very ill guy wants to take us on a sightseeing tour of Plovdiv, throwing up at each monument. In that heat with that smell. So it was lovely. Anyway, it was bizarre. But anyway, he took us to the Roman ruins, the mosque, the King's Garden, the Old Town and the amphitheatre, all of which are absolutely stunning pieces of architecture, and it quickly became apparent that there is so much history in Bulgaria. He told us that Plovdiv is the second largest city in Bulgaria, and it's built around 7 hills. And originally it was a Thracian settlement that was later occupied by the Persians, the ancient Macedonians, the Celts, the Romans, the Byzantines, the Goths, the Huns, the Bulgarians, which comprised of Slavs, Bulgaria or Bulgars and Thracians, the Crusaders and the Ottoman Turks, who have all left behind a wealth of historical artifacts, customs and just amazing architecture, making Plovdiv a really fascinating place. And the streets are huge. They're so wide, with these amazing imposing buildings on either side, full of grandness, and just they're very regal. And then they'll be right next to some stark communist era functional building, which then might be next to ancient ruins or modern shops. It is incredible. It is really an amazing thing to see. And so we did all that, and he was clearly not getting any better. So we were finally allowed to wander on our own and grab some lunch while he went back to rest in the bus. And so that was cool. We wandered off, bought some souvenirs, had lunch at a bar, because we figured if we were going to die in Bulgaria, it might as well be after a crisp glass of chilled wine. So we met back at the bus, was greeted by our new driver. So we had then just assumed that someone would pick up the ill driver and take him home. But oh no. Soon became apparent that he was in the, and I hasten to add, very large boot, but he was in the boot nonetheless, still throwing up. So, I mean, really, you have to give him top marks for just sheer bloody-mindedness. Anyway, our new driver took us around Athens fortress, which is stunning. I mean, it's a medieval building in the Rhodope Mountains, about 2 or 3 kilometres from Asanovgrad. And bear with me on the pronunciations here. I'm not sure what I'm actually saying. And that, incidentally, the town of Asanovgrad is famed as being the town with the most churches and the most wedding dress shops. So I have no idea why, but clearly getting married is very popular there. Anyway, the fortress is about 280 metres above sea level, so the views of the stunning countryside and the town around it are just incredible. I mean, you've got mountains and, it's fabulous. It's amazing. And it's so quiet. It's so peaceful up there and so calm, and you really feel that you're just in another time and place. It is very beautiful. So you go through the fort and you go right up to the top, and standing there is a beautiful old church called the Holy Mother of God, which is, I think they said it was built in around the 12th or 13th century, but it's still used today. And what's more incredible is that a lot of the amazing murals and religious paintings are still evident on the walls and the ceilings, and are just remarkable. The colour and the detail is fantastic. So then our new driver gets a call from the original driver to say that he is now in an ambulance on his way to the hospital. So finally the poor man is was being looked after, and the rest of us thought we could relax. So we all finished looking around the fortress, and we returned to the bus and head off to the Bachkova monastery, which apparently is on the right bank of the Shepelor River. Now, the monastery has also been known over the years as the Monastery of the Mother of God, and it's now Eastern Orthodox, but it's probably best known for uniting Byzantine, Bulgarian and Georgian cultures all under one faith. And apparently it was founded in 1083 by a Prince Gregory Pacorhanus, who also set up a school there. So it was a really vibrant community that he set up. And during the Second Bulgarian Empire, and there have been three, it was dominated by a Tsar Ivan Alexander. And there is an absolutely stunningly beautiful painting of him on the arch of the building as you go in. And over the years, this monastery has been looted and destroyed and repaired during all the various occupations. And the last thing to be restored was the most incredible murals, which apparently were finally restored in 1602. But no one knows who the artist was. And I can't describe them to you, but just suffice to say when I say that they are glorious and intricate and full of life and colour and are just simply beautiful. They take your breath away, and it's just, I've been to so many churches and places and religious buildings, but it never fails to amaze me that there's just stunning beauty of all these paintings inside these buildings. Anyway, the whole place had the most wonderful energy, and I could have stayed here longer soaking it all in, but we couldn't because we had to go and pick up the original driver from the hospital. So we did all that. He really didn't look any better, but swore blind that he was. And we returned back to Sofia much later than intended, and after a very strange day. So we headed off to check in our hotel and then went straight out for dinner, as they had been kind enough to move our reservations for us, because as soon as all this started with the driver, we knew we weren't going to get back in time for the one we'd already made. And the dinner was delicious. We had local delicacies and a good hearty dinner, all served in a traditional setting, which was a really lovely end to our first day in Bulgaria. And, you know, we had a little bit of mindful reflection, and it had been a very strange day. But still, I really enjoyed the tour and Plovdiv and everything else, because it was I just love learning, and to see all these different buildings and how the cultures have evolved. I love it. I just love it. And I think it makes the world a smaller place. Anyway, following morning, we were booked into a walking tour of the city of Sofia, which was absolutely fantastic. Our guide was brilliant. It's very hot. And so our guide did his best to stop in the shade as he explained the history of what, similar to Plovdiv, but the Greek, the Roman, Ottoman and Soviet occupations, which are all really evident in the architecture in a similar way to Plovdiv. Only here they're all in layers. It's really mad. So low in the ground might be like a 4th century ruin, and then you go up a few steps and there's another layer which might have 15th century church, and then you go up onto the pavement which might have a 20th century building there, which might be next to a 21st century communist grey block of a building. But it's so clear to see the layers of history around the town. It's just amazing. And I learned that Sofia is not named for the saint, of which there is a massive statue of in the middle of the town, but for the church of Saint Sophia, because it used to mark the outskirts of the town, and people would use it as a marker for directions to the town of Serdica, which was what Sofia was called before. Until in the end, it just became known as Sofia, because that was what people knew. You go to the church, when you see the church, when you get to Sofia, then you're in the town. And so everyone just started calling Serdica Sofia. And that's how the name came about. And the weird thing is, this statue of Saint Sophia has caused a lot of outrage, as she's wearing quite a revealing dress for a Christian saint, and she wears a crown and has an owl on her arm, which apparently are both pagan symbols. Not only that, it was designed by an artist who wrongly thought that the saint had given her name to the town rather than the town being named after the church, which was a marker for people's directions. So really it made him very unpopular all around, and yet it's still standing. So we moved on, and he was very pleased to tell us, the guide was very pleased to tell us that the Bulgarians are very proud to be known as religiously tolerant people. And they have what is called the Square of Tolerance in the city, where you've got St Joseph's Cathedral, which is Catholic, you've got the Sophia Synagogue, which is obviously Jewish, the Orthodox Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, and then you've got the Banyai Bashai Mosque, and they make up a square of historical and religious buildings, all content to sit near each other. And this is called the Square of Tolerance. And it's just amazing. So on the tour we visited all of those buildings, and I just love the architecture and beauty of each of the designs. The shape of any mosque speaks to me, and the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral actually has a gold roof. And I've been in many Orthodox churches over the years, and they are all spectacular in their own way. But this is probably the most opulent one that I've been in. And it's just amazing, like the massive hanging chandeliers and the glorious works of art. But just the building from outside, it's just stunning with this gleaming gold roof. It's just fabulous. Absolutely loved it. And then opposite the cathedral, or the Nevsky Cathedral, is the King's. Well, there's a little park type thing. It's got some really cool architecture in it and some really cool sculptures and a little flea market. So we had a little wander around the flea market. And that was mainly all like military medals and icons, and it was quite a strange little flea market, but interesting nonetheless. And then we visited the King's Park. So this is a huge, massive expanse of greenland in the town centre, with lots of seating and beautiful fountains for people to just sit and watch or meet their friends or just relax, and loads of people were making use of it. And then there's the National Theatre, which is again a stunning building which has been fully restored in all its impressive glory. I mean, just stunning building. And that's on the edge of the park. And then as you go further on, there's a former bathhouse which has also been fully restored, which is now the Museum of History, but previously was a bathhouse. And so you can see all these beautiful buildings, but obviously they've been adapted for modern use, and you know, they've got access and all the rest of it. But around these buildings are also natural hot spring fountains, which the locals drink from, believing it to be healing waters. So obviously we tried some. We were assured it was very safe to drink the water. And it's weird because it comes out hot. It comes out at body temperature. And it can be left to cool down, but we were told that most people actually drink it warm. In fact, you know, the joke was if you had a tea bag on you, you've got a ready-made cup of tea. But it was just bizarre having this very warm water, hot water, coming out and trying it and drinking it. It didn't really have a taste. It was just fresh. Anyway, so that coupled with the healing water I've had in Bartley, I reckon I'm pretty set up for the winter this year now. Anyway, I digress. So it was a much nicer day that day, really. We'd walked around, it was lovely, it was a lot less stressful than the day before. And so I was really able to be present and mindful and pay attention to our surroundings and notice the interactions between the people wandering around. And I do love a bit of people watching. So we found a cafe and sat outside and just watched everyone as they went around their business. And I think that having the really wide streets adds to the aura of calm. And I think also because of the heat, you know, you don't get so many people rushing around. And also it was a Sunday, so lots of families and friends come out to gather in the parks and the bars around the town, which gives it this really vibrant energy without the underlying busyness of you know, that you usually find in a capital city. It was alive, but it was very settled and calm. It was really lovely. I really enjoyed being there. And then it was time to head off to our restaurant, which I'd pre-booked, for an early dinner, and we were very keen to try out some other local dishes, especially a cake known as garesh, which I can tell you is delicious. It's mostly a very moist chocolate cake, but was very scrummy. So I was very pleased to have tried that, especially obviously as it had to be gluten-free for me, and cake is often an issue, but yeah, absolutely scrummy. We had a really lovely conversation with our waiter who travelled loads, and so he just wanted to know where we'd been, and I guess at a job like that you get to meet lots of people who travel, and he was full of useful information and bits and pieces for us. So it was a really lovely experience. And then And that was really quite strange, because we found lots of people who were really open and friendly and interested to talk to us. But we also found that a lot of people were quite closed or guarded, um, and maybe a better, well, some were just downright rude. I'm trying to think of a way of putting it politely, but actually they were just very rude, not only to foreigners but also to each other. I mean, we stopped somewhere to get a drink, and he wouldn't serve me. And then the woman that came after me, who was Bulgarian, asked for a certain brand of cigarette, and he wouldn't give her them either. He gave her the ones that were closest to him and said she had to make do with it. So that was like really quite strange, because I can't imagine anybody holding on to their job if they behave like that here. But anyway, it is what it is, and it didn't detract from the lovely time that we had there. It was really, really lovely. So, and also, I don't know why they're so guarded, unless it's a generational wariness, like an ancestral learned behaviour caused by years of occupation, and obviously more recently the communist rule, which is something they really don't like to discuss. I mean, they don't even teach it in history at school, apparently, and yet there's evidence of it everywhere. So it's a very strange place, but I really, really loved it. And despite all our adventures yesterday, I really did enjoy my time in Bulgaria, and would highly recommend it if you get the chance to visit. It is stunningly beautiful and very interesting, and strangely very calm. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed the time there. Anyway, we took a slow walk back through this beautiful city on our way back to the bus station, and really felt that we had a good sense of how the city had been formed, and how people lived here, because we'd walked around so much of it. And we got on our overnight coach to Athens, which was leaving at 8:30. So one of them was leaving at 8:30. I hadn't gone completely mad. I'd obviously just thought that I'd booked them both at the same time. And we even managed to get some sleep on this journey, which was lovely. And then we woke up and we watched the sunrise over Thessaloniki in Greece as we came back home for the rest of our holiday, which I hope you'll join me for. Speak soon. Bye. Hi, welcome back. So, as I said, we arrived back in Athens after what seemed a much less busy night coach ride, and we even managed to get some sleep, although that sunrise in Thessaloniki was spectacular and worth being awake for. And I know this sounds a bit blasé, but I have lost count of the number of times that I've been to Greece over the last 33 years I've been with my husband. But I think it must be about 24 or 25 times. And I've been to islands and different places on the mainland, and her beauty and her energy just never fail to amaze me. I absolutely relax here, and I absolutely love it. But I am always keen to learn or see something new. So on each trip, I like to try and do something different, even if it's just trying a new bar or new restaurant. But I really like to go somewhere different as well. So my husband has recently had hypnotherapy to conquer his fear of heights, and that has been absolutely life-changing for him, and opened up a whole new range of places that we can go together. So as soon as we got off the bus, we headed for a coffee, obviously, and then we began the walk up to Mount Lycabettos, which is the highest point in Athens at 277 metres above sea level, you'll be pleased to know. But even that early in the morning, the temperature was about 31, and walking up steep steps was hard going. So I was very pleased when we reached the cable car that was able to take us to the top. And the legend has it that Athena dropped the limestone mountain that she had been carrying to use for the Acropolis, and that was what became Mount Lycabettos. And it got its name of Lycabettos due to the wolves that used to live there. I don't know how true any of that was. I didn't see any wolves when I was there, but it is quite stunning. So the cable car doesn't take long, nor is it expensive. Although by the time I sweated and struggled my way up to it, I would have paid just about anything, as I was not climbing any further. And we got out, and immediately the wind hits you at the top, because you are just so high up and completely unprotected. As does the just incredibly stunning views of Athens. So Athens sits in a bowl of mountains, and from up at the top of this mountain you can see every landmark and building. It is truly breathtaking. I mean, you can pick out the Acropolis, you can pick out Syntagma Square, you can pick out everything. It's incredible. And right at the very top is a restaurant. So if you want a meal with an amazing view, That's your place. But we were heading for the 19th century Chapel of St George, which is still in use today. Only because it's not still in use today because it's the saint my husband is named after, but my husband wanted to see it because it was the saint he's named after. And the chapel is beautiful. It's a whitewashed building with blue doors, and then to the left of that you can see the amphitheatre, which must have just been amazing in its day. So we took in the views, but actually you start to feel very mortal. I don't know if that's due to the wind and the fact you feel like you might die at any moment, but actually you won't because you're quite safe and there's like rails all around it. But also I think because you can see so much history laid out before you, that you realise how very quick our lives are in comparison and why it's so very important to live every moment of them. It really was an incredible experience and one that I would highly recommend, and I'm so glad we got to do it. It was just brilliant. So we returned to the cable car, and after leaving there we walked downhill, thank goodness, towards Monasteries, and the views on the walk down are just incredible. I mean, like I say, I've been to Athens so many times, but I got to see a side of Athens that I had never seen before, and also just, I'd never been up so high, obviously, but just as you walk down into the basin of Athens, it's just incredible. You can see from just about everywhere the Acropolis. It's just, yeah, fabulous. I loved it. I really loved to see a different perspective of it. Anyway, we decided that while we were in Athens, we might as well do as much as we can there. And as we have seen all the familiar sites, which are very worth seeing, let me tell you, but we've seen them so many times before as we've taken people around them. So we decided that we would revisit some of the places that we had gone to when we were very first together 30 odd years ago. So we got tickets for the hop-on, hop-off bus, and we went to the port of Piraeus, which has changed massively over the last 30 years and is now, I think thanks a lot to Chinese investment, but is now the biggest port in Europe, with access to loads of the islands and all the major shipping lanes. And from here you can see the island of Aegean, which the lady on the tour constantly said wrong, which was driving my husband crazy, which I would also recommend visiting because it's just beautiful, and the pistachios grow there, which is very, very cool. Anyway, so we're on the bus, we drove around the streets that are now filled with museums and religious buildings and bars and seafood restaurants, and it's just got such a lovely vibe. And it was really lovely to just look over the crystal clear sea and see all the white yachts and the hugely expensive boats that just gleam in the sunlight, and it's just, you know, it's just a beautiful life. And I can remember being there a long time ago at an oozery and having all this fresh seafood and drinking ouzo and just thinking, God, this is just a different life. This is a different way of living. And yeah, I'm still coming back for more. So it's amazing. Anyway, we swapped buses and we went on a tour of the beaches around Athens, and there are loads of them. I think people forget that there are so many beautiful beaches around Athens. And for my part, when everyone says to me, where should we go in Greece, I would always say, absolutely, have a couple of days in Athens, you know, go and see all the amazing things. They're amazing for a reason, you know, and do the whole tourist bit and soak up the culture and eat the food and be part of the hustle and bustle. But then I would go to an island, because that's I think what most people want to see. They want to see the little cobble streets and the restaurants at the edge of the sea and just that lovely, calm, relaxed feeling. But anyway, Greece anywhere is beautiful, but that would be my advice to you. Anyway, so we're going around the tour of the beaches around Athens, and we went to Cliffada, which is one of the first places we used to go. I don't remember it being overly posh back then, but now it's really cosmopolitan area. I mean, it might well have been, but I obviously was dazzled by my husband. I didn't really pay much attention back then. But now it's full of designer shops. It's got the only golf course on the mainland. It's very, like I said, very cosmopolitan. It's very expensive, but it's very beautiful. And so it was really interesting to see how that had been developed. And then we went on past Vula Beach, which is very highly maintained. And I don't know if you still do, but we used to have to pay entry for it. I can't remember. Maybe, I don't know what it was, 5 dracs or whatever it was back then. I can't remember. But that was literally so that they could maintain toilets and showers for you and keep it all looking beautiful. You might have even got a sun lounger included in that. I can't remember. Like I say, it was a long time ago. And there's lots to do there now, and it's been built up, so there's lots of entertainment there, and it's one of the many blue flag beaches in Greece, so it is very beautiful. From there we went to Kavouri, which is the beach that my husband proposed to me on 32 years ago, Oh no, actually 30, how long have we been married? 31. Yeah, 32 years ago. So we had a little moment there, and that was very lovely. And then we went past to Vougliemeni, which on the day that we got engaged was where we went for dinner with the family to celebrate in the evening, because inside the limestone caves that were there was a restaurant. Sadly now, the restaurant and the cave are no more, as the caves collapsed and is only a lake remaining. But we have lovely memories of it, and it was stunningly beautiful. And so from there we went back into Athens, finished our tour, and walked through. So we came back towards where the Acropolis is, and then we walked down towards Monasteries, all through the little tiny shops and the stall holders on the steps. And we're lucky enough to catch the changing of the guards at Syntagma Square, which is also where we need to get on the train, which takes us back to Artemisia. So we had a really, really lovely day. Went out. I don't, did we go out for dinner? No, I don't think we went out for dinner that evening because we were quite done. That had been quite a hectic weekend. But the next day we had to go up and go into the town of Artemisia to get some paperwork signed, and we needed it witnessed. So on our way, we took all our cans and bottles, all my husband's cans of lager and the odd bottle of wine, to the recycling bank, because they have this excellent new scheme there where you can feed your recycling into a machine and it weighs or counts it, and then it gives you a voucher to use either at a local supermarket, or you can choose to donate the money back to the state. And if you've got to get rid of it anyway, and you always, in Greece, you take your rubbish to the skips, they don't come and collect it. So most days you end up taking rubbish anyway. So it's no hardship to just take your recycling there and do it. It's on the way into town. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And obviously we weren't going to be going to the supermarket that the vouchers are valid for, so we donated our money back to the state. And it's only cents that you get. I mean, like, it's pennies. But I guess if you do enough of it, and lots of stuff comes in cans and bottles in Greece, then obviously you get to build your money up. But I absolutely love the idea, and I'm really happy to see anything that helps to reduce waste and helps people out. So we made it to town, considerably lighter now that we've dumped our recycling. And I do have this very fabulous metal yaya trolley, grandmother's trolley, that we take everywhere with us, because we walk everywhere in Greece. Like, we don't drive when we're out there, and we always end up having to carry stuff back, even if it's just bottles of water or swimming gear or whatever, and the trolley is the way forward, especially if you've got a little bit of a dodgy back. Anyway, so we got to town, and we had to go to the council office, which turned out to be a really quick trip. We thought it might be quite a lengthy process, but it was really good. So you go there, you're given a number, like a deli counter style, and you're asked to wait. And the queue looked very long, and so we prepared ourselves to be there for a while. But it was really, really fast. People were seen really quickly, and within no time at all, we had what we needed, and we were on our way. So we stopped off at Tony Frey's windsurfing school on the way back to the apartment, so that my husband could pick up a couple of t-shirts that he'd ordered from her, and to say hello, as they'd gone to the same school. And I don't know if you know, but Tony Frey is an Olympic windsurfer, or was an Olympic windsurfer, and now runs a school at the beach. And she's had a terrible time lately, as her surf school burnt down just as the season started. And bearing in mind that she employs local people and it brings money to the community, and also just the personal tragedy of losing your business, it was just awful. But thanks to a collective effort, lots of kind donations of time, money and equipment, she was very soon able to get back up and running, not in the way that she was previously, but enough that she could keep everybody going very soon. And so that's just amazing, and getting the t-shirts was part of the fundraising for that. So that was all really lovely. And hopefully next year we hope to take some windsurfing lessons, but you can't do it in just one lesson, you need a bit more time, and we didn't have that this trip, so fingers crossed we'll get to do that next year. And then for the rest of our trip, which was very unusual for us because usually we're busy looking at stuff and doing stuff, we just chilled. We spent lazy mornings at the apartment, in the hammock, reading, just relaxing and being still, really, which was a really lovely thing to be doing. And then the afternoons we went to the beach, swimming, relaxing. We went to the local bars and restaurants for some delicious food, and we even spent one evening at the beach. We stayed there till it was dark. We watched the sun go down while we had takeaway heroes, which God, they're the most delicious thing. So normally it's a pitta, and then it's got loads of the meat that you would see in a shop where they carve it off. And it's got tzatziki, it's got salad, and it's got chips. Oh, it's just deliciousness. So obviously mine doesn't have the pitta because I've not found a gluten-free pitta in Greece yet. But they come in these huge boxes, and you get enough to feed the 5,000, and you can get takeaway wine and takeaway beer to go with it, which is obviously what we did. And we sat there eating this, watching the sun go down, and it was just absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. And we just had the best time. It was just really lovely to just take stock, be really grateful of what we've got, enjoy the time that we had together. You know, lots of exercise, we did lots of walking, lots of swimming, but it was all just perfect, absolutely perfect. And as is the way with time, Sunday was very quickly here and it was time to go home. So we packed ourselves up and we took ourselves off for a last frappe before we left. And then before we knew it, we were back at the airport and ready to go home. And so all I have to say is thank you, Greece, and we'll be back soon. And I hope you've enjoyed listening to our little adventure in Greece. It's very, very different this time, but I really enjoyed the side trip to Bulgaria, and it was really nice to see a different side of Athens. And I really loved just taking time and having a few days on the beach and reconnecting. It was lovely to spend so much time outside, to really ground myself in the water, to spend a lot of time just thinking and being and meditating. It was a really, truly restful, beautiful holiday. So, as always, thank you very much for joining me. And I'll help you join me on my next Mindful Mutterings Goes Travelling when we visit Egypt. Take care. Bye.